Another day to punch people in the philosophy. Here we go.
Such an association would dispel an Earth with vast antiquity. The entire
Oh,
history
wait,
of
this is the
if
coming
here
up
was
shit. Get this out of here. Very interesting way to open a video. Um, I don't think I've ever seen Answers in Genesis do this before.
Are churches teaching young people Bible stories or history? Now, some might think that these are synonymous.
Um, I'm telling you right now, it's Bible stories. I was raised in the Sunday school, children's education. Like, I was raised being in that environment, and I'm telling you right now, it is 100% Bible stories.
However, often the honest answer to this question is that most children from Christian homes are presented the biblical narratives and big picture concepts of Scripture as stories, rather than real historical accounts. And why do I say that? Because when the biblical narratives are brought to their logical conclusions, the accounts contained within naturally lead to obvious questions for young minds.
Yep.
Questions that are almost never addressed by Sunday school teachers and youth leaders, pastors, even if they
Which is very, very telling.
teach the Bible as plainly written. And these questions typically relate to the real world topics children deal with on a daily basis. Let's say a child, we'll call him Johnny, goes to Sunday school class where the teacher that week is discussing how awesome God is and that He's the Lord of heaven and earth, and so we should be good stewards of the world because He created everything, including animals and man, in 6 days. Okay, check. Then another week, the teacher discusses the account of the Great Flood and how all of the land animals were sent to Noah by God and lived together for a year in this big floating zoo, etc. Check. Then another week. The teacher discusses how in the beginning there was a very good world where no bad things happened, and that bad things are the result of the fall. Where
I, I'd like to point out that I can already think of a few questions. I can already think of a few questions that a child might ask, um, given all of these stories as a whole.
Adam disobeyed God, and the wages of sin is death, and that someday God is going to remake the world, and there will be no bad things just like in the beginning. Check. Now, as all of this teaching continues and the related concepts keep piling up along the way, Johnny will attempt to harmonize all of this information into a cohesive framework in which to understand the
Which is why kids make the perfect scientists. Most of the time, you'll see that the scientists that we have today are mostly people who have not lost their childlike thirst for knowledge. And I can't wait for this guy to spin it in such a horrible way. Fucking hate this shit.
world. However, Johnny has lots of other information rolling around in his noggin as well. Ideas that he's collected along the way, usually from outside of church life, from the school he goes to, the books he's reading,
Now he's gonna villainize mainstream fucking science. God damn it.
the TV shows he's watching, etc. And he'll need to incorporate that and figure it out. Ideas to do with topics like dinosaurs. You see, like most kids, Johnny really likes dinosaurs, has toys and dinosaur books, watches cartoons about them, and plays games with them featured. And he wants to know how dinosaurs would logically integrate with all of these Bible stories and related concepts and ideas
They don't.
that he's been taught. A young mind might naturally ask, if God created man and land animals on day 6 of creation, did man and dinosaurs live together? Why
They didn't.
doesn't the Bible mention dinosaurs? Many dinosaurs were huge, so how did dinosaurs fit into Noah's Ark? Why are there no dinosaurs alive now? And these are all good questions. However, not only are there natural questions regarding dinosaurs that might arise while listening and learning the Bible, but Johnny's store of knowledge often includes information that he's accepted as truth that is in direct opposition to what the Bible teaches.
Because, and believe it or not, the Bible is fucking wrong. It's not hard to come up with evidence that proves it wrong. Of course, most of that evidence is not available to children. Meaning, fucking villains like this dude, I believe his name was Calvin, fucking villains like him will just pour in all their bullshit and neglect to actually teach the child what he needs to learn for literally the future of mankind.
Now, mom and dad told him that he needed to listen to his teachers so that he could get good grades. And he did.
That should not be why kids listen to their teachers. Kids should listen to their teachers to expand their knowledge base, not to get good grades. That's a big issue with the school systems nowadays. It's more focused on grades than actually learning.
He accepted what they said was true, just like he accepted what his Sunday school teachers told him was true. The problem is they disagree.
I look forward to you joining us at our next investor webinar, where you can drill deeper into our 9 to 13%.
The information from the two authority figures he was told to listen to doesn't line up at all. Why?
Because, and get this, preachers are wrong.
Well, according to the information typically taught in school textbooks, TV shows, and museums, dinosaurs lived and died out 65 million years ago. Check. Dinosaurs evolved into birds. Check. And human beings and dinosaurs did not coexist. Check.
And this is taught because, and get this, there's tons of evidence for it.
However,
Almost as if it's the fucking truth.
if dinosaurs evolved into birds, then the story of evolution is true, so the Bible can't be taken as plainly written where it says God created everything from nothing.
Yeah, because the Bible is wrong.
And if Adam's disobedience was what brought sin and death and corruption into the world, how could dinosaurs have been dying millions of years before Adam even existed? And if science has proven evolution, why should we believe in God as creator when it's been proven that everything creates itself? Tilt. And now,
Okay, that's a complete misrepresentation of how evolution actually works. Everything does not create itself. What happens is everything has different genetic variation because of mutations that automatically happen during the swapping of DNA between the father's sperm and the mother's egg. Basically, that swapping has a few errors, right? Few errors happen during that swapping of information. Then the kid is not perfectly only their parents. They have small changes. That creates genetic variation between everyone in a population. And basically, over time, what will happen is that genetic variation will stack and stack and stack until you see phenotypic changes, that is, changes in the structure of the actual animal. And basically, there will be phenotypic changes that may be as simple as this one has slightly bigger wings. Could be as simple as that. And then selection pressure may kill off, there may be a selection pressure that is to the negative of creatures with small wings. And so the creatures with smaller wings will die off. And the creatures that just so happen to have bigger wings will live on to reproduce. And then they pass on that genetic variation. And then the genetic variation of the population, well, then maybe some of them will have slightly bigger wings than that previous generation. And the 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 creatures with smaller wings are still dying off, so those ones with bigger wings are able to reproduce better, and so now you have just ever so slightly bigger wings within the population. And that continues and continues and continues until you have a generation that may have double as big wings as their ancestors. See how I just explained how natural selection works using simple concepts that could easily be broken down to teach a child? And mind you, Answers in Genesis fully acknowledges that that what I just explained is true. Answers in Genesis fully admits that natural selection is true. Obviously, I'm not sure if they actually call it natural selection, but they have actively defined natural selection and said it's true. And get this, if that keeps happening until structures change and eventually the animal that is produced may be completely different from its ancestors, you can't call that the same animal. It technically is the same animal, but the box that we use to define it now has to be different because it's so different from its ancestors that the things that define the box that we were using before do not define this new animal. In other words, microevolution causes macroevolution. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
What Johnny's dealing with at a very young age is a major cognitive dissonance. There's an obvious conflict between what he believes the world of science is teaching about dinosaurs and what the Bible states.
Yeah, because there is a massive fucking difference.
So the question becomes, which authority is correct? What many
Science, not the Bible.
young people feel is this. On one hand, there's a bunch of nice people telling somewhat disconnected Bible stories, and on the other is a cohesive, consistent, and supposedly scientific explanation presented alongside
Remove the supposedly, and I completely agree with you on that sentence there.
facts like fossils and rocks regarding dinosaurs that contradicts these stories. So, which should be believed? This is just one example of why research has shown that 7 out of 10 young people from Christian homes that attend state-run school systems believe by age 13 that there are major conflicts between science and the Bible.
Yeah, the horrifying part of that is that means 3 out of 10 don't. And that is deeply, deeply horrifying.
With the majority of them ending up rejecting the faith of their parents because of it.
As they should. Here we're gonna have another fucking ad, god damn it.
Many Christians underestimate
Or not? What the fuck? I definitely thought there was gonna be an ad there. Weird.
the amount of information their children are absorbing at very young ages. And because logic is hardwired into every one of us, it's dangerous to believe that we can simply ignore worldview conflicts until later ages. A perfect example comes from the atheist historian Tom Holland, who revealed how he recognized the logical disconnect of what he'd been taught about dinosaurs from what he learned in Sunday school, even as a young child. When I was a boy, my upbringing as a Christian was forever being weathered by the gale force of my enthusiasms. First, there were dinosaurs. I vividly remember my shock when, at Sunday school one day, I opened a children's Bible and found an illustration on its first page of Adam and Eve with a brachiosaur.
Fucking bullshit. That should never have been in print because it's not true.
6 years old I may have been, but of one thing, to my regret, I was rock solid certain. No human being had ever seen a sauropod.
Yeah, because they hadn't.
The teacher seemed not to care about this error, only compounded my sense of outrage and bewilderment. A
Mm-hmm.
faint shadow of doubt, for the first time, had been brought to darken my Christian faith.
And just like that, he lost me.
Do you see how clearly he was able to articulate it? By age 6, he was rock solid certain that no human being had ever seen a dinosaur.
Yeah, because clearly his science education was really fucking good.
Now, most kids aren't rock solid certain of whether they want Rice Krispies or Cocoa Puffs for breakfast, and yet he knew with certainty that people and dinosaurs had never coexisted.
I'm sorry, have you met a child? Have you ever had breakfast with a child? I don't think I've ever seen a child deliberating on which kind of cereal they want, especially not a child that young.
So one has to ask, where could that certainty have come from at such an early age? One would have to assume that whatever information he'd absorbed regarding dinosaurs was so fascinating and authoritative sounding in his mind that he was able to quite easily reject the biblical teaching that God created land animals and people at the same time as just a simple story.
Like I said, clearly a very, very good science education.
And the seed of doubt against biblical authority was firmly implanted from very early on.
No, a seed of truth and understanding was planted from very, very early on.
All right, this feels almost
There's the ad.
illegal to know, but our windows were so old and just desperately needed to be replaced.
Nobody cares.
Parents need to understand that we are in a very real spiritual battle with an enemy bent on capturing the minds of the next generation.
I'll bet, because you're trying to lie to them. I bet it's hard to keep lying to them when they're being taught truth.
When we profess the lordship of Christ to our children, we must do so in every area of life, whether discussing philosophy, science, or Sunday school, and show them how what we see in God's world, like fossils, rocks, and animals, can be explained logically by what we see in God's Word. We need to
No, 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 no. Do not tell a child to seek fucking. Oh my god, dude. Why would you tell a child to seek truth from the Bible? At all. That's like asking somebody to find fucking, I don't know, a gold coin in a fucking, I don't know, a fucking haystack. Like, yeah, you may find, like, a coin, but it's not going to be a gold coin. It may be similar, but at the end of the day, it's not the same.
to understand that Christians aren't the only fishers of men, and that topics like dinosaurs are often used by secularists to sway young minds towards an evolutionary
No, 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 no. No, we're not gonna act as if the whole, like, the whole aim of schools is to teach kids that creationism isn't true. The whole aim of schools is to disseminate knowledge. That's the aim of schools. It's not our fault that your worldview is based on lies. Just because we are teaching truth and you are teaching lies does not mean that it is a personal attack. We're not gonna sit here and pretend that your worldview is valid in any way. We're not gonna pretend that here.
Atheistic understanding of the world. Atheists understand how powerful and engaging topics like dinosaurs can be used to promote their worldview. And
No, 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 no. Once again, that's not the aim. The aim is to disseminate knowledge. The aim is to spread knowledge so that the younger generation actually has a fighting chance. You are teaching them lies and stripping away their entire path in life. You are completely ripping away their entire chance to actually live a good life by teaching them these lies. So once again, we're not going to act as if the aim here is to rip away your children, because that's not what's going on here. We're teaching your children and helping them to actually form actual knowledge that is true so that they can go on to lead full lives. We're not going to act. I'm not going to let this slide, dude. You're not going to sit here and act like the whole aim here is to corrupt children. And especially given that that's your aim, dude. Your whole aim is to actively teach children lies. And that's not okay.
often use it to their advantage. As an example, a blogger writing for the Meaning Without God project confessed, "Dinosaurs were my gateway drug to atheism. And while I was still 6 or 7 years away from reaching the conclusion that God didn't either care about us or didn't exist, the dinosaurs had shared an important secret with me, that the Bible can be wrong." However, parents can also use
Once again, that was not a result of people trying to teach your kid about dinosaurs. That was the result of your kid getting rightfully curious about these giant lizards and your kid being taught the truth. He then went on to actually learn about science. Just because you never gave the truth a fighting chance does not give you the right to strip away that chance to learn from your children. And it's honestly despicable that you're trying to do that.
topics like dinosaurs and fossils to build up the faith of their children by showing that the evolutionary explanations for these topics simply don't add up.
Yeah, if you explain evolution wrong, yeah, it doesn't add up. The reason why so many children are actually growing to accept science is because they're actually being properly taught. Something you fucks don't actually do.
For example, children's books about fossils almost always refer to fossils having been formed slowly over thousands of years. And yet, leading evolutionists such as dinosaur expert Dr. Phil Curry has stated, "Fossilization is a process that can take anything from a few hours to millions of years. The amount of time that it takes for a bone to become completely permineralized is highly variable. If the groundwater is heavily laden with minerals in solution, the process can happen rapidly."
Yeah, because the whole point is that there has to be enough minerals there to actually replace the bone. So yeah, areas that already have plenty of minerals will very easily fossilize like dead matter, bones.
It's an easy thing to use such admissions from evolutionists to teach young people critical thinking skills. For example, if fossilization has been observed to happen quickly, within hours, Why would someone believe it sometimes takes millions of unobserved years? Biblical creationists have a far better explanation for the majority of the fossil record, namely the worldwide deluge recorded in Genesis 6 to 9.
We're not going to act like the flood is at any sort of credible. I've already debunked the flood many times before. There have been many questions that, like, dude, there are so many things that we would see in the world if this happened, and we don't see any of them.
What better explanation could one have for the billions of mixed up dead creatures buried within sedimentary, waterborne layers that we observe worldwide?
Okay, because you went after this so voraciously, I'm gonna give you guys one of my many questions that completely debunks the flood as a whole. Um, we see all of these things in layers that you can distinctly see and distinctly test that they are different levels of different minerals. If the flood happened and all of those fossils, all of those dead bones were laid down in one go, why is all of the rock, all of the sedimentary rock that they are in, why isn't all of it all like one equal disseminating uh amount of the levels of the different minerals in this rock? Why are there distinct layers? Because if the flood happened and they swirled everything around, that would mix all of the sediment as well. Why are there distinct layers if the flood happened? If the flood happened, what would happen is it would just be solid rock, dude. It would just be solid rock. All of around the same levels of each particular mineral. Why do we see layers at all if that's what happened?
A worldwide flood that would have stirred up massive amounts of minerals and sediments and buried creatures rapidly makes sense of the physical evidence.
No, it does not.
And the fact that many dinosaur bones not only contain unfossilized soft tissue, but that some aren't actually fossilized is clear evidence these remains have not lasted for millions of years.
That's just bullshit. I've explained this in a previous video as well. Things like decay only happen when the things that cause it to happen are present. Under a bunch of sediment and a bunch of sedimentary rock, like there's a good chance that at least at some point there was no, in one particular place, there were no bacteria to cause that decay. So, what are we doing here, bro? What are we doing here? Because you just said, oh, it's impossible given the amount of time, without giving any evidence as to why it would be impossible. And I just explained how it would be entirely possible.
As Dr. Curry went on to say, a more spectacular example was found on the north slope of Alaska, where many thousands of bones lack any significant degree of permineralization. The bones look and feel like old cow bones, and the discoverers of the site did not report it for 20 years.
Yeah, you want to know why that's so incredibly possible up there? Because the things that cause decay aren't present in super low temperatures. We see this in Antarctica, where, like, if you are approaching where penguins are, you'll smell it far sooner than you'll see it because the excrement literally does not decay because the things that cause that decay are not present, or they are present in such incredible low numbers that it takes forever for it to happen.
Because they assumed they were bison, not dinosaur bones.
This is one simple cleaning trick seniors can use to instantly clean toilets without any scrubbing.
I
Take your most
don't
disgusting toilet.
care.
Now, some parents, knowing that topics like dinosaurs can be used to sway young minds towards an evolutionary worldview, think that the best approach is to simply avoid the topic or teaching about them whatsoever. But a far better,
Which is just stupid. Oh yeah, I don't know anything about this topic, so I'll just not tell them, but I'll also keep my kid away from anyone who will explain that. Like, you should want your kid to learn that. You should want your kid to learn. You withholding information is only going to make them doubt more.
better approach is to get equipped and expose children to the fallacies of the story of evolution by facing them head on and analyzing the obvious
There are no fallacies in the story of evolution.
discrepancies in their materialistic explanations. Teach your children to recognize the presuppositions often contained within the evolutionary explanation,
Nope.
such as this comment by Dr. Ralph Molnar, a paleontologist for the Queensland Museum, discussing
Oh boy, quote mining. Here we go.
a creature called Megalania, which supposedly died millions of years ago. Now, this specimen actually looks like it had come from an animal that looks like it died 200 or 300 years ago. All dry, chalky, this sort of thing. Doesn't actually mean it died 200 or 300 years ago. In Montana, I've seen dinosaur bones that look like they've come from animals that died 200 or 300 years ago. I know very well that they died much longer than that. It gives the suggestion that Megalania may have been alive fairly recently. So again, one could
we're gonna do this thing that I like to do whenever Christians or creationists specifically make a quote from an actually reputable scientist, and what I like to call that is looking up the quote and reading literally the next sentence. So let's see, it was Dr. R. Molnar. Dr. R. Molnar. R. Molnar. Michael. Fuck. They don't give an actual first name, do they? Let's see if he says it. Where?
died million comment by Dr. Ralph Molnar, a
Ralph Molnar. There we go. Ralph Molnar. And we're gonna copy and paste.
Paleontologist for the Queensland Museum discussing a creature called Megalania.
What? Do they cite their sources? Do they? Looks like no. I guess all the citation they have
which supposedly
is,
died millions of years ago.
in the bottom here. Now this specimen actually looks. Now this specimen actually looks like it had come from an animal. Like it had come. Is that a fucking fly? What the fuck is that? There's some lint. Ew. Come from an animal that looks like it died 200 or 300 years ago. That looks like it died 2 or 300 years ago. I can't find the quote. Damn. Well, here's Answers in Genesis quoting. Let's see if they actually put in the, where is it? I don't see any quotation marks. Yeah, I'm not scanning through this whole thing. Just remember that this is likely taken out of context. And he's very careful. He says, looks like it died 2 or 300 years ago. And I'd like to remind everyone that the process of decay, it was likely very much so slowed. And on top of that, the fossils likely also only looked like the thing had been dead for a few hundred years.
Now, this specimen actually looks like it had come from an animal that looks like it died 2 or 300 years ago. All dry, chalky, this sort of thing. Doesn't actually mean it died 2 or 300 years ago. In Montana, I've seen dinosaur bones that look like they've come from animals that died 2 or 300 years ago. I know very well that they died much longer than that. It gives the suggestion that Megalania may have been alive fairly recently. So again,
Once again, easily could have been slowed by the lack of cause, right? By the lack of the thing present that causes that. Also, on top of that, I'd like to remind everyone that looks like is not valid evidence for what something is.
one could use this to help young people think through the subject by asking, is Dr. Molner's belief that the creature died millions of years ago simply based on the facts right in front of his eyes? No. Such admissions reveal he has a
Oh my
pre-belief.
god, you're stupid. You're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. He never said the reason why he knows that. Just because he never stated it in that quote does not mean that he has no reason to believe it other than he was told so. There are dating methods that can be used to date these things. Just because that little itty bitty part of his explanation that you took doesn't have his explanation does not mean he doesn't give an explanation. And I bet you if I found the rest of that quote, he would have gone on to explain, or he had explained before the bit that Calvin took out of context. There are ways that we know this, and these ways are not, I don't know, somebody told me. Just because that's the basis of everything you believe does not mean that other people are just as foolish.
An ideological commitment to the evolutionary interpretation of facts despite what the specimen looks like, not
Looks like is not valid evidence for anything.
because of it. So, belief in evolution is not simply because of the science, the way that most people think of it. Another great proof for the historicity of the Bible, its young Earth time frame, and the logical conclusion that dinosaurs and people
Oh boy, here we go. What kind of stupid shit is he gonna say?
Did in fact coexist in history that you might discuss with young people is the sheer number of dragon legends that people groups from around the world have. These are
Do you realize just how different Eastern and Western dragons are? Eastern dragons look nothing like dinosaurs. They look like snakes. Case in point, this picture right here. It was literally thought to believe that dragons came from snakes in ancient Eastern mythology. I'd also like to point out that Western dragons are not much better. They may look similar to dinosaurs, but there's a very, very distinct shape, and it resembles literally no dinosaur fossils at all. You can't just say, oh yeah, these people thought of reptiles in big form. It must be the same as reptiles in big form from millions of years before. No, they look absolutely nothing alike. You'd have to be lying to yourself, or lying to others, or majorly concussed to think that.
in fact so common that evolutionists can't dismiss them easily, and are also so problematic that no other than the renowned atheistic evolutionist Carl Sagan actually attempted to explain them away in a book titled Dragons of Eden. Sagan recognized that the descriptions of the creatures in dragon legends are remarkably similar to dinosaurs, and he admitted that the similarities were probably no accident.
These creatures were thought to be mythical, dude. These creatures were thought to be rare. Do you understand that if dinosaurs actually lived alongside humans, that they would be everywhere and they wouldn't be fucking mythological creatures? If dinosaurs lived alongside humans, people would see them every day. There would actually be people going around and taming them. I bet. Like, actually domesticating them and riding them and shit. For fuck's sake, this is so dumb. This is such a dumb argument. And it's one that Answers in Genesis fucking clings to.
Saying,
This is Pod 5, the first fully immersive sleep system
I don't
built to give you all-night
care.
the pervasiveness of dragon myths in the folk legends of many cultures is probably no accident. It's a worldwide phenomenon. Now, what's so interesting?
Yeah, and you'll notice that around the world, they have literally so many features that are not the same. Like, they look about as different as literally every way a culture could have actually thought up a dragon or a massive reptile. Like, dude, they vary so much, and literally none of them actually resemble actual dinosaurs.
Interesting in his quote is that Sagan connects dragons to dinosaurs in the same sentence and uses the terms interchangeably, intimating that whatever these creatures were, they were the same thing. And what was his explanation
Yeah, somehow I doubt that.
of why humans from all over the world claim to have seen these huge reptilian beasts in the past? The R complex is functioning in the dreams of humans. The dragons can be heard hissing and rasping, and the dinosaurs thunder still.
And here's just even more fucking evidence that this guy has absolutely no fucking idea what he's talking about. Because that sentence was not using dragons and fucking dinosaurs interchangeably at all. He was saying that the legacy of the majesty of dinosaurs lives on. The idea of dinosaurs lives on. Not that they were actual dinosaurs.
Now, Sagan's explanation, what he referred to as the R complex, was, to be honest, absolutely absurd. He basically concluded that humans inherited the memories of seeing dinosaurs in the past from our far earlier,
Yeah, that's really weird picture to use.
more primitive evolutionary ancestors. Apparently, according to Sagan's theory, these non-human ancestors of ours were so impressed with the image of those creatures that the memory of them was somehow imprinted into our...
I'm gonna go back to where that quote was, to see just how fucking long ago that book came out. So, 1539, 1539, 1539, 15. That was literally close to 50 years ago. 1539, 1539. There we go. 50 years ago, dude. You didn't think that maybe we came up with fucking evidence since then?
DNA and passed on. And those inherited memories are where the dragon legends come from. Try convincing your local biology...
I'd like to point out that that is batshit fucking crazy, but it was 50 years ago. I bet we have more than double the information than we had back then. Especially since genetics and other very, very, very modern aspects of science are very much so, like, exclusive to this century for the most part.
Professor, that the idea of inheriting memories of events seen by supposed millions of years old creatures is scientifically viable.
Yeah, 50 fucking years ago.
You're likely to be taken about as seriously as a local fortune teller.
Yeah, just like how fucking, just like how Charles Darwin would have been laughed out of literally any community, like, if he were to talk about his knowledge in the modern day. He was wrong about a lot of things, and we've gotten a lot more information since then.
Evolutionists still don't have a good answer as to why people groups all over the world have stories regarding creatures that have descriptions like dinosaurs.
Oh boy, it's almost as if everybody could have came up with Big Lizard. It's not exactly a very complicated fucking topic, dude. It's just like the fucking idiot giant conspiracy theorists going, "Oh my god, all of these people had legends of giants." And it's like, dude, big person is not a complicated subject. It's not complicated whatsoever. It's super conceited is all I can say. It's super conceited to act as if you know the truth of literally everything. Just because you take a book at face value.
Even the 1973 World Book Encyclopedia contained this entry under dragons. The dragons of legend are strangely like actual creatures that have lived in the past. They are much like the great reptiles, dinosaurs, which inhabited the earth long before man is supposed to have appeared on earth. However, they have a very specific reason to mock it when creationists bring it up, which is a good way to teach young people about interpretive bias. For someone wondering why the association
Yeah, no, it's called creative, or sorry, not creative, critical thinking. You've said it before, but clearly you don't teach it. Um, we only move forward with any facet of science once we fail to disprove anything. You can easily disprove your entire idea of everyone like made giant reptiles and there used to be giant reptiles and correlating the two by literally saying people find reptiles cool and people find big things cool. People would find big reptiles cool, dude. It's not a stretch of the imagination to think that many cultures may have thought up giant reptiles as mythical creatures.
between dinosaurs and dragon legends is often played down by the evolutionary community, I don't think anyone could have explained why or made the point better than Bible skeptic Louis Jacobs, author and
I bet I just gave a perfect explanation that is completely overshadowed by this very much so quote mind quote.
former president of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology did when discussing the matter in his book, Quest for the African Dinosaurs.
When we touch here, maybe just try this, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, that feels nice. Yeah, that's good. So just do that because
Such an association would dispel an Earth with vast antiquity. The entire history of creation, including the day of rest, could be accommodated in the 7 biblical days of the Genesis myth. Evolution would be vanquished. Indeed, Jacob's comment is the perfect summation. If humans saw dinosaurs, and they did, evolution is dead in the scummy water.
It's literally, you literally just took the guy saying, yeah, if you prove something that's contrary to what is actually proven currently, that becomes disproven. It's basically saying, yeah, if you prove your world, if you prove that the Bible is true, yeah, all of science would have to be false because they directly conflict with each other. It's a good thing nobody has proven the Bible to be true.
It was supposed to have spawned from. And the plethora of dinosaur depictions demonstrating people did observe these creatures, found on tapestries, carvings, and engravings around the world, is the kill shot.
This is bullshit. This is very much so bullshit because, once again, none, absolutely none of the depictions of big reptiles in the history of humanity actually like they don't even look like any species of dinosaur that we've found so far. So no, it's correlation the correlation here is just completely empty with no evidence.
Shot for their naturalistic worldview. Indeed, just 3 such unique findings depicting sauropods clearly demonstrate humans witnessed live dinosaurs. How so? Well, one of the oldest Mesopotamian cylinder seals, cylinder-shaped seals rolled on clay to embed images. 2, an engraving on Richard Bell's tomb.
Yeah, neither of these actually look like dinosaurs that we've uncovered. First off, this may look like I forget what they're actually called. This may look like common long-necked dinosaurs at face value, But if you actually look at the finer features, like the feet here, if you look at how the head is shaped, it becomes very, very clear that this is not that. It becomes very, very clear that this is similar, but not the same.
Play to embed images. 2, an engraving on
Same thing with this. It's the exact same thing.
Richard Bell's tomb, the Bishop of Carlisle. And 3, the Narmer Palette, a vase from the first dynasty.
Yeah, once again, this does not actually look like any dinosaur that we've uncovered thus far. And I can't even make that one out. I don't know what that is.
Egypt, all have creatures that the average child would readily recognize as looking similar to a sauropod, all having.
They also look similar to a fucking giraffe. The tails are longer, but there are also differences in comparing those to actual sauropods as well. Just because something looks vaguely like something else does not mean they're the same thing.
Long necks and tails. However, and most fascinatingly, they also all show them with their long necks entwined. Each of these artifacts are separated in time by hundreds of years, and geographically by hundreds of miles from where.
It's not exactly a hard thing to think up, dude. It's not exactly a hard thing to think up something that has a long neck, a long tail, and a torso with legs and feet. It's not exactly complicated, dude.
Each was created by 3 separate and distinct people groups living at different times in history.
Yeah, that one has the head of a fucking big cat. That one has weird-ass horns. Oh, wait.
Long necks entwined. Each of these sorters were
Let's see if I
Richard
can
Bell
get the other
of
one.
Tomb, the Bishop of Carlisle.
This one shows drastically less short head, or neck. Shows drastically less short neck. And its head isn't even entwined there unless it has 2 heads. Because that would be its tail, given that its head is over here.
Egypt entwined. Each of these artifacts are separated in time by hundreds of years, and geographically by hundreds of miles from where each was created, by 3 separate and distinct people groups living at different times in history. And yet, all 3 groups depicted these long-necked, long-tailed creatures, unlike any living animal today, in the same.
Giraffes. They resemble giraffes. If the only criteria you're going based on here is the proportions of super long neck, small body, and legs, they look like giraffes, dude. They look just about as similar to giraffes as they look like sauropods, dude. Fuck off.
Same pose, as if performing the same activity, like giraffes necking. This.
You literally just said it has no resemblance to anything alive today. And you literally just pointed out that they do the same thing as giraffes. Do you see how dishonest this motherfucker is? Do you see this?
Is indeed strong evidence that people observe these creatures through time. And there have been many.
I'd also like to point out that there are no fucking scales on any of those depictions. it could just as easily be depicting a mammal as it could be depicting a fucking a lizard. A reptile. I should say reptile.
Many more depictions of dinosaurs of all kinds found that support the idea that what people used to generically call dragons were in fact the same as what are referred to today as dinosaurs. And of course,
you have given absolutely no evidence of that.
The fossil record continues to show more and more support for the idea that there was a global flood and that dinosaurs coexisted and were buried with all types of animals.
Nope, there is no evidence of that.
Including beavers,
no evidence of either of those things.
Ducks, and platypus, all of which was unheard of when I was growing up and reading books on dinosaurs and fossils. Many people believe that dinosaur and mammal remains are separated by millions of years of time in the fossil record. And yet, as modern evolutionist Dr. Donald Burge admitted in an interview recorded in Dr. Carl Werner's book, Living Fossils, we find mammals in almost all of our dinosaur dig sites. These were not noticed years ago. We have about 20,000 pounds of bentonite clay that has mammal fossils that we're trying to give away to some researcher. It's not that they're not important. It's just that you only live once, and I specialized in something other than mammals. I specialize in reptiles and dinosaurs.
Which is smart. Why would he care about mammal fossils in the same dig site as dinosaur fossils when he specializes in reptiles and dinosaurs? I'd also like to point out that you can find fossils of animals that were, like, in completely different eras in the same dig site, because you have to dig through the recent stuff to get to the old stuff. And I cannot stress this enough, fucking mammals existed at the same time as dinosaurs. First mammal fossil date. $225 million years ago. When did dinosaurs go completely extinct? 66 million years ago. That is a difference of how much? Oh, whoops, I did not mean to do that. Whoops, what? I'd open a new tab. That is a difference of approximately 160 million years. There were 160 million years where mammals lived alongside dinosaurs. Not humans, but mammals.
If your neck looks like this, you need to watch this video. When you sit at your desk or use your phone, your head protrudes.
As I mentioned, I can remember reading books about dinosaurs as a child that considered the idea of dinosaurs and mammals coexisting a ridiculous notion. And yet as time went on, the evidence continued to pile up to the dinosaurs as a child that considered the idea of dinosaurs and mammals coexisting.
Yeah, that's stupid. He's conflating humans and mammals, which is just stupid. Also, you were a kid fucking well before most of this evidence, dude. You're old as fuck.
A ridiculous notion. And yet as time went on, the evidence continued to pile up to the point where today evolutionists are admitting the following. In a sense, the age of dinosaurs is a misnomer. Mammals are just one such important group that lived with the dinosaurs, coexisted with the dinosaurs, and survived the dinosaurs. Now, with all of this information and so much more that supports biblical creation, why is the church not able to equip our young people to understand topics like dinosaurs from a wholly biblical point of view? And it's not just the topic of dinosaurs.
Because you're wrong.
Why hasn't the church been able to help our young people defend the Bible from the very first verse in all areas? In my experience, it's because parents and church workers themselves are unaware of the evidence and the arguments, and so are unequipped to teach it.
Yeah, because they were lied to for so long that they don't actually know about the real arguments being made.
And even worse, others have adopted evolutionary ideas into their thinking and don't understand how damaging that is to the biblical worldview.
Yeah, because they acknowledge the truth.
And so add to the confusion that these young minds are already dealing with. Indeed, telling young people to trust in the historical account of Jesus' birth, death, and resurrection, while at the same time communicating to them that Genesis 1 to 11, which Jesus quoted many times as real history, is just analogous to the story of evolution, theistic evolution, the idea that God used evolution to create, is not at all helpful to a mind looking for cognitive consistency.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix that sentence for you. Believing that is not conducive to lying to people. Thinking that is not conducive to lying to people because, and get this, you are lying to yourself. And it's so easy for people to pick up on that when you're teaching them about how you're lying to yourself, so that you can lie to them, and then they can lie to themselves.
As Bible defender William Jennings Bryan once said, theistic evolution may be described as an anesthetic.
That was a quote from over 100 years ago. That was a quote from 1922. It is 2025. Just throwing that out there.
Administered to young Christians to deaden the pain while their religion is being removed by the materialists. It's time for those responsible for teaching the next generation, the church of the future, whether parents, Sunday school teachers, youth pastors, or church leaders, to realize that you can either teach children.
Yeah, he's wrapping up his video now, and I don't fucking care. Just for funsies, let's go down in the comments, see what people are saying. Let's get a keep up the good work. Yeah, fucking dislike. Amen, Jesus Christ. Fucking that guy is a cult follower. Great video. Would like to see a part 2. Nope. Who replied to him? Why? David never saw part 1. He had no problems or. Oh, fuck. Damn it. I thought this was gonna be a comeback. That's unfortunate. Disappointing. Yeah, I'll be honest. I thought there were gonna be more actually decent comments. Fuck is that profile picture? Anyways, if you keep coming back, subscribe. If not, I don't give a shit. Baba Booey, I guess. I think that's my thing now. I've done it for 3 videos now.